What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about Super Mario Bros., the 1993 fantasy adventure nightmarish dystopian dinosaur film directed by Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is because the brand new Super Mario Bros. Movie has just come out with Chris Pratt and Jack Black and all those guys in it, and the reason that movie is so closely related to the video games in terms of style and presentation is because of this film that came out many years ago. If you haven't seen Super Mario Bros. From 1993, you need to be prepared going into it because you're probably going to expect something very similar in tone to the video games, but instead you get a very crazy and bonkers looking universe that has dinosaur people, wild practical effects, early CGI done the same year as Jurassic Park, and a tone that is pretty dark in comparison to the source material. That being said, from what I'm aware of, they were actually supposed to be way darker at an earlier version in the storytelling process, and it kind of turned into the PG film that we see in the final product. The filmmakers agreed that the approach to adapting this particular video game into a film should follow a darker tone that had already begun to be popularized in stuff like Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. To quote one of the filmmakers, "This wasn't Snow White and the Seven Dinosaurs. The dino world was dark. We didn't want to hold back." Screenwriter Parker Bennett added that our take on it was that Nintendo interpreted the events from our story and came up with the video game. We basically worked backwards, taking inspiration from Die Hard, Mad Max, and Blade Runner apparently, and the whole thing acts as sort of this prequel story to what you see in the Mario Brothers video games.
Today on our miraculous world, another dimension.
Now, it's famously known as one of the biggest flops as far as video game movies is concerned in general, but it was competing against Jurassic Park when it came out, so it didn't really have much of a chance to stand on its own. Does that make it a great film and one of the hallmarks of modern cinema? No. But it is a movie that I will admit I always had some sort of fascination with, and for one thing, that has a lot to do with the nightmarish and terrifying practical effects that went along with the film that featured dinosaur monsters transforming into humans and vice versa. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the unused props, concept art, and ideas they had for the first Mario Brothers movie. So the idea for Super Mario Bros. From the early 90s, that movie got all of its ideas from a parallel universe inhabited by dinosaurs. Now, the reason they went down this route was because of the brand new game Super Mario World, which featured Yoshi and a lot of other dinosaur creatures that were brand new to the Mario universe. Director Jankel envisioned the parallel dimension for the film as a whole world with a reptile point of view, dominated by aggressive primordial behavior and basic instincts. Following in the success of movies like Ghostbusters and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it was always supposed to be a little more satirical, but the crazy designs they had going in here were really interesting. You can see here a lot of the creepy imagery that was used to actually showcase Dennis Hopper's King Koopa de-evolve into a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is basically what was Bowser during this movie. A lot of the ideas for the film kind of take the basic stuff from the Super Mario Brothers universe and update it in a more Mad Max and kind of dystopian future, which is legitimately what they were going for. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo were the guys that played Mario and Luigi. Initially, Hoskins didn't really like the script, saying that he'd already done Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Steven Spielberg's Hook, so he didn't want to become like Dick Van Dyke. But he did think that it would be a cool movie to sign on to, I guess. John Leguizamo actually went on to say that what he liked about the script was the adventure and the action that was involved. Mario was known all over the world, so to see this kind of realistic take on the source material had to be really interesting. Now, you guys have probably already seen my video dedicated specifically to the Tyrannosaurus Rex monster Bowser that's in this movie, which was designed by Patrick Tatopoulos, who later went on to do Godzilla, the American Godzilla from the 90s. He wanted to design something a little more cute and cartoon-like and take some inspiration from Beetlejuice when it came to the dinosaurs in the film, but I'm just saying, This stuff is straight up wild looking, and it's something that I've always been a really big fan of because it may not always look awesome, but it is something that I've gone back and forth of like, yeah, it's cool. It's just such a bizarre and creepy looking film.
Get me the rock! Come and get it, lizard breath!
I'm not so sure why they wanted to go in such a dark direction for the Super Mario Brothers movie, but with stuff like the Goombas that instead of having really big heads and tiny bodies, they have really big bodies and tiny heads, and they're way more dinosaurian in nature, almost snake-like. It's just an interesting way to portray the source material. All throughout the cityscape, you've got what they call Allosaurus rats, which kind of tug at fungus and other things along the streets and stuff. It's a very interesting film, to say the least.
What single-cell organism did you evolve from?
Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Lizard King, thank you very much.
I guess when you look at something like the Super Mario Brothers universe that has a couple of plumbers running around a fantasy kingdom and big dinosaur turtle creatures attacking them, to do that in live action would mean that you'd have to make something a little more dark than what you could possibly get away with in a 8-bit or 16-bit video game. But the direction they took it in, and I will be honest, I actually really enjoy. But that's not to say that everyone else involved felt the same way. Bob Hoskins said in a 2007 interview that the worst thing he ever did was Super Mario Brothers. It was an effing nightmare. The whole experience was a nightmare. It had a husband and wife team directing whose arrogance had been mistaken for talent. After so many weeks, their own agent told them to get off the set. That is wild in my opinion. But there is like a certain group of people that just love this movie in general, and I think that's kind of cool, man, because I get it. It's a very outlandish and strange thing to even exist. Recently, my buddy Tony from Hack the Movies went over the work print version of the film, which featured some even more wild ideas that didn't get made, and he actually pointed me in the direction of a full-body suit for King Koopa that was unused in the movie, which is wild because you're basically looking at like this Jurassic Park / Godzilla inspired Mario film from the early 90s, and it was very, very dark and strange. The transformation process that King Koopa actually goes through in order to turn into the Bowser T-Rex creature is just bizarre. You've got this otherworldly creepy grin with sharp teeth and long razor sharp clawed hands, morphing slowly into kind of a goofy looking dinosaur blob mushroom guy, kind of similar to the Goombas in the film, before, you eventually get this thing, which a lot of you remember and I think is really, really cool. That's not the only thing that was really outlandish and bizarre about that movie though, because everywhere you turn, you've kind of got this sort of tactile and RoboCop looking universe that has fire everywhere, sparks flying off of cars and buildings and stuff like that, and it's just very, very weird. One of the coolest things I heard from the film is this theory, and who knows, it might be true, but you know how all the cars run off of these kind of like electrical tracks? Well, apparently that's because they're all dinosaurs, so fossil fuels aren't really a thing, which if true, it's kind of funny. Now, I don't know why they always wanted to make Yoshi so small, because Mario was never going to be able to ride him in this actual film, but he's kind of creepy too, and even attacks somebody's foot, so there's everywhere you look some sort of strange dinosaur looking creature that I actually think is pretty fun, in all due respect. Unfortunately for everyone involved, the Super Mario Brothers movie was not that big of a hit, and it kind of flopped when it came out. Not many people liked it, and a lot of people actually called it one of the worst movies ever, which I think is a little harsh because there is a lot of stuff going on here. There has been a lot of fan reception in recent years to kind of build it up as this cult classic, which I think is fair, but yeah, it's just a very strange movie that I'm kind of glad exists in a very weird way, because had it not been for a film like this to ever come out, who knows what would have happened down the line. I mean, there's no way it didn't influence other Mario projects. So yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people enjoy talking about. Anyways, guys, those are all just my own thoughts and opinions on the subject matter. Now, whatever your own thoughts on the Super Mario Brother Nightmarish production and dinosaur designs happen to be, and your thoughts on the movie in general, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below.